All right, I want to clarify the purpose of me recording this video. I'm not here to attack Roman Catholics. I'm not here to attack Eastern Orthodox or defend them or defend Protestants or anything like that. That's not the purpose of this video. So why am I making this video? If it's not to attack Roman Catholics, if it's not to attack Eastern Orthodox, if it's not to attack or defend any specific side here, what am I making this for? I want to make this video for clarity and just to offer my perspective on this whole debate on whether Christians and Muslims worship the same God. Or some people take it to the next level and say whether Allah is Yahweh, right? And I think that's a bit of an extreme, but we'll get to that. So, do Christians and Muslims worship the same God? I'm confident enough to say no, but I want to clarify certain things that seem to be going around, some nuances that seem to be going around, right? So, number one, I think when having this discussion, we need to have an open mind and try to listen to what the other side means. I certainly do not like it when Muslims, talking to them, don't care to hear what you're actually saying. I mean, for example, you might watch a Christian discuss with a Muslim, and a Muslim might try to make this kind of trap, the debate trap or a rhetorical trap, and instead of letting the Christian clarify his position, like no, 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 yes or no or whatever, right? They're not going to let them clarify. I don't like that. I don't like when people do that to me. I hate that. It comes off as very dishonest, and I don't like it. So I think as Christians, we should try to not do that to each other and try to listen to see what the other person actually believes. And that was hard for me when I first heard this issue coming up because the second I heard Christians and Muslims worship the same God, I immediately things started running through my mind. I was thinking, oh, Roman Catholicism is heresy. I started thinking like, oh, I'm never talking to another Roman Catholic again, or whatever. Things started running through my mind. But I told myself, all right, let's take a second, breathe. Let's actually ask, what do they mean? Let me listen to them, right? Let me listen to what they say. I think we need to have this attitude here and try to listen to what each side says and carefully examine the information instead of jumping to, oh, Roman Catholicism is heresy. They're, a bunch of Babylonians or whatever, whatever someone might say. I think we got to be careful. And I think most of this debate, for the most part, is a disagreement on terminology, not theology. I think I could go ask Sam Shimon right now, and he'd probably tell me Allah is Satan still, right? At least I think I don't know, right? But I mean, he said that in the past. I know that's what he firmly believes. So I'm sure if I went up and asked him, "Hey, is Allah Satan?" he would tell me, "Yes, absolutely." So I think the issue in this debate is terminology, and we saw this in history, right? In the Council of Nicaea, we had the Orthodox and Eusebian group, right? The Orthodox group and Eusebian group, they did not disagree in theology, right? They both believed that the Son is truly God. But what they were disagreeing on was terminology, whether to call the Son homoousios, of one substance with the Father. One substance, right? Same substance, because homo means same. So that was the main debate between them. It wasn't on whether the Son was actually truly God. It was terminology. So I think you could say this for the most part, not entirely, but for the most part, that's the debate going on here. Terminology. What is the proper terminology to say of Allah? Is he the same God as ours? And we got to be careful when we say that, because if you're going to say that, you got to clarify what you mean, right? And what I've seen from Roman Catholics on this is basically how I understand what they're saying is that um, directing worship to the God of Abraham. So, for example, Jews in the first century, you probably most Christians probably wouldn't say that they worship a different God, but they have very wrong ideas about God. So, and I'm gonna apply. I'm not gonna apply that to Islam, as we'll see in a second. I think that's a false analogy to Islam, but this is what they do mean. Um, right, and I think there's a passage in Acts chapter 20 or 22. I'll try to find it, but Paul talks about his ways in the past, and he says that he was a fervent believer in God. Look, Acts chapter 22, verse 3. Acts 22, verse 33. So I'm indeed a Jew, born in Tarsus of Cilicia, but brought up in the city at the feet of Gamaliel, taught according to the strictness of our father's law, and was zealous toward God as you all are today. So Paul here is not saying that he is zealous toward a different God; it's the same God, right? But he had very false ideas about God. He was directing worship to the true God, but he had false ideas of God. Now, I understand that analogy. I'm not saying that it's a completely wrong analogy and that it's a cope from that Roman Catholics are making. I don't think that. But I do think that it's a bit of a stretch to apply that to Muslims, because I think you can make a difference and a distinction between Muslims and Jews of the first century. They may be directing worship to the same God as the Old Testament, but Muslims have very big differences between the God of the Old and New Testament, right? Like Allah, whether he's a father, right? That's a huge thing. The Trinity. There's a lot of huge issues that now we know, because remember, progressive revelation, right? So maybe, and I don't believe the Trinity wasn't known about until like the New Testament. I think we see traces of it in the Old Testament, like an angel of Yahweh and the spirit of Yahweh, but it's a separate topic. Maybe I'll address that in the future, but that's a separate topic, so won't get into that now. But but either way, progressive revelation, right? So I have no problem with progressive revelation, but once that revelation has progressed, right? Well, then now anyone that rejects it is not in the truth, right? The entire gospel message, well, you can find traces of it in the Old Testament and it being prophesied. You don't find it all summarized into one verse or one message there yet. It's prophecy, it's progressive revelation. But now that it's revealed, anyone that's not believing the gospel obviously does not have salvation, right? It's progressive revelation. But yeah, the old and new type covenant. Now we're in a new covenant. Now there's things established. So with that being said, Muslims, we're in the age where the Trinity has been, it's fully established, it's revealed. The gospel, Christ being God, the incarnation, all this is being revealed. So if they reject that, I have issue with saying that we worship the same God. I do. I'm not going to say that Roman Catholics are heretics for this, because I think this is the main issue with this is terminology. So I think the issue is whether Muslims are in error insofar as that they have errors of the true God, or whether they worship an entirely different God. That's the issue, right? I think that is the issue that's being brought up. I mean, for example, for heretics, and this might be again another issue of terminology, some people might say that they have errors about the true God, right? Because they're in heresy. So some people look at it similarly to Islam. That some might say that Muslims have error about the true God, heresy about the true God. Maybe they won't use the word heresy, but they have errors about the true God, but who they're trying to worship is still the true God. I think that's the main difference versus whether what they're worshiping is an entirely different God. I personally don't think Islam falls into the category of the same God, but errors of the true God. I don't think so. I think it's just a completely separate God entirely. That's just the way I view it. And that has biblical basis, right? You can say like what Paul says in Acts 22 here, Acts 22:3, but you can also say something like, so this is 1 John 2:22-23. Who is a liar but he who denies Jesus is the Christ? He is Antichrist who denies the Father and the Son. And keep reading, verse 23 is important. Whoever denies the Son does not have the Father either. He who acknowledges the Son has the Father also. So this is important, right? You need to have both the Son and the Father. You need to acknowledge them both. And if you don't acknowledge one, you don't acknowledge the other. 1 Corinthians 8, verses 5-6. For even if there are so-called gods, whether in heaven or on earth, as there are many gods and many lords, yet for us there is one God, the Father, of whom are all things, and we are for him, and one Lord Jesus Christ, through whom are all things, and through whom we live. So there's biblical basis really for both sides. It's just a matter of which category does Islam fall under. So that's just a quick thoughts on that. I'm not trying to attack any side particularly. I'm not trying to call anyone out. This is not the purpose of this video. It's just to offer some perspective from me for clarity, to understand what's going on here. Do Muslims really worship the same God as us? Now, I do think that saying Allah is Yahweh is an extreme. I don't know if anyone actually says that. All I know is that Cameron Bertuzzi from Capturing Christianity hosted a debate between Apostate Prophet and Trent Doutre, I believe. And the title was literally Allah equals Yahweh with a question mark. So I don't know if they were taking it that far to say that Allah is Yahweh. I think that's an extreme, and we should try to reject that immediately. That's an extreme. That can be very misleading. It's that's an extreme way to put it. I wouldn't go that far. And the Catholic document specifically in Vatican II, I believe it's called, it seems to not word it very accurately, because the way it words it, it immediately comes off as saying that Muslims are saved. The way it words it, maybe I'm misinterpreting it, but that's just the way it seems to be worded. That Muslims are actually saved because they have worship of the same God. So I think that when encountering this issue, it's an issue of terminology for the most part, and we gotta be careful, and we gotta be open minded to listen to what are we actually saying. And it's good to have this discussion so that we can actually have proper terminology and properly communicate what we as Christians believe. I do think people take it too far and start condemning people to hell. Like, I think some people on the Roman Catholic side on this are saying, "Oh, you guys are polytheists now." Like, okay, come on now. Saying that we don't worship Allah is not polytheism. It's simply a rejection of falsehood and rejection of false gods. That's all it is. And I think some people on the other side of the debate, like the Eastern Orthodox or Protestant side, will kind of take it too far and say, "Oh, well, look at that. Roman Catholics think that Muslims are saved." I don't think really any genuine Roman Catholic believes that. So I think we got to be careful to understand what we actually believe and use proper terminology. And I think with that being said, I'm going to end it here. That's just my brief thoughts on this, on whether we as Christians worship the same God as Muslims. I do not believe we do, but I do think that there are certain. I think that we misunderstand what people mean when say that. When Roman Catholics say that, I think we misunderstand what they mean. So that's it. I'm going to end it here. I'm not going to say any more on this. I'm not going to go debate this with people. I'm not going to go make any more videos on this. Hopefully not, unless something comes up and I'm going to be forced to. Then all right, it's all in God's will. You know, whatever God wills, let's do it. So I'm going to end it here. Thank you all for tuning in. With that being said, I'm going away. So God bless you all and goodbye.